Right, welcome back to our latest BuffZone video, and I am pleased to be joined by a man that CU fans didn't know at all like 5 6 months ago, but now knows very well. Neely, Uncle Neely, how you doing?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing great, man. Glad to be with
Yeah, you and I go way, way, way back to December.
you. We
you know,
we do.
yeah, it was funny. We met back in December at the Celebration Bowl. I went down to Atlanta to cover that, and I was going to be meeting with Coach Prime a little bit and some of the players, but I was told that Coach Prime had said before he meets me, he's got to meet Neely. And you were the guy that was has been that go between, right? And so you're the one that introduced me to the players, things like that. And so you're kind of the man around there. And so I appreciate all that, but it's been nice to see you around Boulder as well.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it, man. Like you said, I was a stranger to Boulder, and Boulder was a stranger to me. But since December, practically been living there 2 or 3 weeks out the month, and you and I connected at the Celebration Bowl, and then connected with that first off the record meeting with the local media that Coach Prime did, and it's an honor to serve in that liaison capacity for him and with him, with the media, with the players, and you've been there since day one, man.
Yeah, it's funny because I think people see you in your videos and think, man, he and Prime must go back a long time, but you don't. And I think the thing that surprised me when I first met you was that you didn't know Coach Prime until he got to Jackson State. And so real quick, can you just tell the story real quick, how you met Coach Prime and how did you get to this level to where he trusts you to be around as much as you are?
Well, there were some parallel tracks running that I had no idea at the time they would one day, overlap and intersect. So I'm at the Senior Bowl in 2020 because I used to work with a sports agency, helping their players get ready for interviews that they would be doing at the Senior Bowl. And a guy named Cortez Bryant, who also went to Jackson State a couple years behind me, he wanted to pick my brain on something. And what it was discussing the possibilities of a guy like Deion Sanders becoming the next head coach at Jackson State. And so it was really a conversation that was more figurative than literal, more rhetorical than it was actual.
Yeah.
But as the months went along and this thing started to take place, where it looks like he's going to be our next head coach, I didn't officially meet Coach Brian. Literally just September 21st, 2020 at his opening press conference, and he had a meeting with some what you call stakeholders in the athletic department. I was privileged to be on that meeting, and as Providence would have it, I'm kind of like you are with CU football. I'm a historian for Jack State football, and when he was coming and bringing his son, his high school Trinity was going to play a school in Mississippi up in Clarksdale. So I said I took it upon myself. I'm going to go up here and watch this game to see if this guy's about to be some daddy ball, with his son, or does his son really have the stuff? So I drive up to Clarksdale and watch a game, man. And midway through the first quarter, I text a buddy of mine back in Jackson, said, "No, Shador Sanders, this ain't no daddy ball. Like this, this guy
Yeah.
can without play, man." And met Coach Prime again after the game, and he remembered me from that initial meeting. Then literally the next day was the funeral services for our legendary coach W.C. Gordon, who had passed away. And so I'm with the athletic director at that funeral, and in walked Coach Prime and sits there, and he looks at me like, "Now I've seen this guy, at my opening press conference. He was at a football game in Clarksdale. Like I think I need to get to know this dude." So it just took off. It just took off from there, and I was doing the sports thing covering Jackson State, and he called me up right before what would have been the last couple of games during our COVID season, and said, "Man, I want to bring you in house. I want to make you officially part of some inside stuff we're going to be doing for the fall season." And he really
Yeah.
blessed me with that opportunity. And it was just based on trust and work ethic. And like you said, Brian, people think we go back to his Cowboys days with all this gray I have, but you're talking about all that happened within a 3-year window.
Yeah, that's crazy. I will say, I've been asked a question a lot, not necessarily daddy ball, but like, with Shador being the quarterback, what is this really going to be like? And CU fans are a little bit scarred by the coach quarterback thing from the Hawkins era from several years ago. But being down at the Celebration Bowl is like, nope, this is Shador's the real deal.
Yeah,
you know,
he is.
he,
He is, and what he brings to the table in his mental acumen during the game, his preparation before the game. It translates to any conference. A lot of folks will say, well, he was at HBCU and he was playing a less competitor level, that he'll be in the Pac-12. But I'm telling you, just fasten your seatbelts and watch. This guy's going to be phenomenal. It ain't daddy ball. It ain't because his last name's Sanders. This dude is one hell of a quarterback, man.
Yeah, and I will say I do expect there to be some adjustment. Obviously, it's a higher level, right? And there will be some adjustment. But what I saw watching it live in Atlanta, I was like, no, this guy, he's doing things that are different than we've seen at Colorado in a while. Things that you see Power Five quarterbacks do. I mean, the escapability, just the throws he can make, things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
we can talk more about that later, as we get closer to the season. But I had the same impression as you. It's like, no, Shador's the real deal. So it's gonna be a lot of
He
fun.
is. And I know we're going to get deeper into it in the days and weeks and months to come, but he's not only coming, and I referenced this because you were at the Celebration Bowl.
Yeah.
He's Travis Hunter is with him, and you saw two guys connect to force a game into overtime. On fourth down. With 3 or 4 seconds to play, that same dynamic between a head coach, starting quarterback, and a guy can play both sides is coming to Boulder. So it's going to be an exciting time, man.
Yeah, and that play, by the way, was one of the coolest plays I've seen. I mean, I thought Jackson State was dead.
Yeah,
I mean, they were down to their last gasp effort, and for them to connect for that touchdown was,
yeah,
it was almost unfortunate they didn't win that football game, but the way they came back and did that. But I mean, that play was phenomenal.
absolutely.
I know you, as a Jackson State alum, were probably going nuts on the sidelines. I was up in the press box, but you had to be going nuts.
I was totally going nuts. And like you just said, man, it was one of those plays from Shador to Travis, a combination we saw during the spring game in Colorado, and a combination we'll see this fall. It was literally fourth down,
Yeah,
fourth quarter, seconds left in the game, do or die. You got to score to give yourself a chance. And it's one of those magical moments where you just knew, okay, if that happened, no way we don't win this game.
yeah. I mean, there was literally only time. There was only time for that play, and that was it.
Yeah, yeah, that was
So
it.
that was it. So anyway, let's fast forward. You've been here now in Boulder. How I want to ask you, how different has it been? I know it's only been 3 months as opposed to 3 seasons at Jackson. How different has it been following this here in Boulder than it was down in Jackson?
It's been mirror image.
Yeah,
But what I'm enjoying in this process is what you guys are going through and what you guys are about to go through. I have witnessed, and so I sit back, as fly on the wall and leaning off the wall like a young Michael Jackson, and I watch y'all's reaction to things I've seen happen already. And so it's really refreshing. It's intriguing to see this guy be able to do the same thing in a totally different environment. And personally, I've just fallen in love with Boulder.
yeah,
The only reluctance I had was the weather, and you guys constantly tell me that this was the worst winter in 20 plus years, and it wasn't as bad as I'd imagined the weather to be. When I first got there, Brian, I bought these big coats and boots. I've maybe worn it once, and then by the time lunchtime comes, you're dripping in sweat because it's gone from 20 to 60.
yeah.
So the weather is not what you think it would be at all. The people are amazing, the facilities are amazing, and to see what Coach Prime's impact has been once again inheriting the program that he's turning around, it's been phenomenal to watch the second go round.
Yeah, we'll be glad you're in Jackson this week. It's been raining all week, and I help coach my son's little league team, and we were supposed to play Wednesday night and Thursday night, and both games got canceled. We're supposed to have practice tonight. That's going to get canceled. So it's just been pouring rain. So be glad you're in Jackson right now.
Well, I think it is literally raining from Boulder to Jackson because it has been raining here nonstop as well. But
Okay.
this is one of those periods in college football where as kids are going into finals and then graduation and then the dead period for recruitment and then coaches out on the road. It was just opportunity to come home these first couple of weeks in May. So it's been good to be here, but looking forward to getting back to Boulder, man.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about spring, but not too much because there's so many of those guys that aren't here anymore. Because we've seen the roster turnover. But what was the biggest takeaway for you from spring with this team? Because you have seen this, Dion's team for the last 3 years, but you have not been around this coaching staff because there's new guys on the coaching staff. There's a new team. What was your biggest takeaway of this team as you watched it in the spring?
Well, with your question there at the end and my answer, people are going to think we scripted this, but you segue right into my answer, and it has been the coaching staff. And let me peel back some layers and tell you why. I saw Coach Prime in Jackson State inherit a roster that was not up to his caliber of what his program needed to be. And so we had 50 plus from April of that COVID season to August of our first, fall practices. You had about 50 plus transition out of the program. So that writing was not only on the wall from my experience, that writing was on the wall from even his testimonies. He hit the ground saying there's going to be some dramatic changes here. But
Yeah.
here's why I put it on the coaches. Whereas he brought a high number of coaches with him from Mississippi, whether it's Jackson State or Vincent Dancy and Valley, these other coaches who came in from Kent State with Coach Lewis and from Alabama with Coach Kelly and Coach Sal, to see them spend the amount of time investing into and training up kids that they had to know is not likely to be here in June. Definitely not going to be here in August. And to see that coaching staff gel and work together, to get that spring product together, man, was just amazing. Behold, Coach Prime has assembled a dynamic staff,
Mhm.
so many former head coaches, so many future head coaches, that watching them work was my biggest takeaway from the spring.
Yeah, yeah, and that's impressive. By the way, that Jackson State roster, I did go and look last week, whatever. That opening day for his first game, I think it was that spring season, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
his first game of spring. So 98 players in the roster, 57 of them were brand new to Jackson State. So that is quite a turnover in 1 year,
Yeah.
especially Jackson State at that level they're allowed 63 scholarship players, allowed 85 at this level. So to turn over 57 when you only have 63 scholarship players. I don't know how many of those guys were scholarship or not, but that's a lot of turnover. We're seeing the same thing here at Colorado. We're
Absolutely.
going to get into that, but I do want to ask you one more thing about Coach Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
In the time that you've been around him, I'm still getting used to saying Coach Prime, by the way. So I've always called guys, either their first name or Coach. And actually,
Yeah.
real quick, when I was in Atlanta, I was riding in the van that they had, that
Yeah.
Dion rides
That's
in.
not a van. That's a sprinter, baby.
Whatever it is, the Sprinter. See, that's my first time in it, so I don't remember. But the Sprinter van. But going from the practice field to back to the hotel, we're chatting, and I told him, I said, just so you know, I'm a little bit worried about calling you the wrong thing. And he kind of laughs. He goes, "Don't worry about it." So anyway, just a little side story there. But what's been the biggest surprise for you with Coach Prime? Because I get asked this all the time of like, is he ready for this level? Can he do this? And the answer I give, I'll give my answer before you answer, but the answer I give is that it's going to be an adjustment for him because it's a new level, but he has surrounded himself with so many guys that have done the job that it's going to help him out a lot. I mean, when you when you got Sean Lewis, who's been a head coach, 4 of the 5 offensive assistants have been head coaches. There's so much experience on the staff. I think he's done a really good job of surrounding himself with people that will help him through the adjustment period. Would you agree with that?
Uh, I agree with the notion, but not necessarily the deep dive on it. Here's why. Coach Prime is Coach Prime regardless of
Yeah,
environment, and whereas he has not been the head coach at a Power Five school, we have to always remember he played football at a Power Five school.
yeah,
So what he brings to the table is he has been recruited by a Power Five, signed with a Power Five, been drafted from a Power Five, gone to the NFL, gone to the Super Bowl, gone to the Hall of Fame. It ain't an experience that Boulder or CU could throw at him that he has not walked himself, not only as a student athlete, but also as a player and now as a coach. And the one thing that surprised me the most was actually that it was Colorado, because here's a guy who I have seen in Jackson, Mississippi. If the forecast is 40 degrees at 7 in the morning and it's going to be 48 at 9, he'll push practice back to 10. He's just not a cold weather guy. And so when he pulled me to the side and let me know that Colorado was where he's going, I said to him, well, I know that's God directed because I know how you are about cold weather. So the biggest surprise was that this non-cold weather guy, decided to take his talents, if you will, and coach in Boulder, Colorado. But since he's been there, I haven't been surprised by anything, whether it's the roster turnover, the quality of the staff he has selected, his attention to detail, whether you are in the custodian staff, the cafeteria, all the way up to Rick George in the AD's office. He is not a micromanager, but is heavily involved and informed in everything. Because if you touch the program and touch his players, you have thereby an impact on winning and losing, and he's going
Yeah.
to make sure anything that touches the program is up to Coach Prime standard. So nothing has been surprising in that regard. But outside of when it became official that he was going to Boulder instead of some of these other places that were in the rumor mill, nothing this guy does surprise me because I've seen it so many times before.
Yeah, and maybe the biggest thing that surprised you is how much he's embraced the cold and be like, "Hey, whatever, let's just go with it. It's not that cold." So, one other note, you mentioned his experience. He's also been the parent of guys that have been recruited by Power Fives, right? Even
Yep,
though Shiloh and Shador were playing at Jackson State, Shiloh started at South Carolina,
he
and
is.
Shador could have gone to a Power Five. Was recruited heavily by Power Five. So,
Yeah,
he's been in all those roles.
and in their recruitment, they were traveling around doing meetings with coaches and
Yeah,
attending spring games at other places. He was just right down the street at USM in Hattiesburg, Southern Miss, for their spring game because Shador was on their radar for recruitment.
yeah,
So he has all those experience that he's bringing to the table. But you're exactly right. He heavily leans on guys like Sean Lewis and Charles Kelly, for their experiences as well, because he's brought in a dynamic staff. Man, I will tell you, even though we've yet to play a game, that this is not only one of the most diverse staffs in Power Five football. When you look at the experience of it, I don't see a staff around the nation that has so many former head coaches and former coordinators in various positions than what they previously served in. And I don't want to fast forward too much because I want to enjoy this ride, but I'm looking forward to 5, 6, 7 years from now to see which one of these coaches, part of Deion Sanders' coaching trio, now head coaches themselves somewhere else.
yeah. I think that's going to be one of the fascinating things to watch. I agree with you. Let's not fast forward too much, but that'll be a fascinating thing to watch over the
Mhm.
next 5 to 7 years. Is how many of those guys on this staff that haven't yet been head coaches, like a Nick Williams, Brett
Mhm.
Bartolone, guys like that. Where are they at in 5 to 7 years? But
Yeah.
let's go to the roster turnover because that is the hot button topic.
Oh yeah.
And I will tell you, you for me, like, yes, I'm a little skeptical about like, can you really put together basically remake an entire roster in one off season? But I'm skeptical because we've never seen it, you know,
Mhm.
especially at this level and this many. I mean, Jackson State, we mentioned it, turned over quite a bit, but this is going to be like 75 new scholarship players. So there's part of me that's skeptical. However, I will say that, man, I think he's taken way too much heat, publicly and nationally for all this stuff. It's like, okay, number one, people, this team wasn't very good. Number two, the rules allow this,
Yeah.
whereas they never really had before. It's sort of this perfect storm of like the rules are different now to where it's allowing Dion to do this. And, you can take a roster that wasn't very good and flip it very quickly. And, you couldn't ever do three recruiting classes in one offseason like he's doing right now. And so I will say, so like I said, I'm a little skeptical to see how it comes together, or maybe not skeptical, but curious to see how it comes together. But at the same time, I think people just sit back and watch it happen because this team is not going to be worse than last year. They're going to be better than last year. And I think he's getting way too much heat. And I know you're a Dion guy, so you agree with that. But like, are you amazed at how much heat that he's getting for what is going on here?
Well, I am amazed, but I'm not surprised
Yeah,
uh, because the thing is, man, there's so much of the attention that comes from it are coming from people who don't understand the process, are coming from people who are not familiar with the new rules and what's allowed, and coming from people who exist in comfort zones. And one thing that Deion Sanders does not do is exist in a comfort zone. He's going to do what is uncomfortable, what moves the needle. And I think even in that vein, so he hit in December and January and February, and he's telling players and telling staff, about the changes that are coming, that if you don't come up to the standard during the spring conditioning and spring practice. I think people took that as just a rah-rah speech, and he's just saying those things to kind of motivate the troops. Not understanding, because they don't know Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, well enough yet, that if he says it, he means it. Like it ain't cap, it ain't hype, it ain't hyperbole, it's not spinning. He's telling you exactly what's coming, and he
right.
does what he says and says what he does. Now, as far as the curiosity or skepticism, as you put it, I understand, because this is something that is new to CU football. But having seen it myself personally at Jackson State, and what folks got to throw out the window is this notion of what used to be, D2 HBCU level and Power Five. When you're managing a roster, you're managing a roster.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's double A ball or big ball or triple A ball. You got to put the best team out there, on the field to win. And here's what this guy did from a COVID season to fall ball. Some 60 players changed over, and he only went undefeated in conference and won the conference championship. And then did that 2 years in a row. Never lost a conference game and won the conference championship in both those years as well. So he knows how to get the most out of today's roster. His coaches know how to do that. They know how to get players to play at a level. And you better believe that they are designing this roster and their needs on what it takes to win now, not what it takes to win 2 years from now or 3 years from now, because you don't have that kind of growth period in college football anymore. You got right now, then you got next season, and both of those teams could be completely different when you have what was once in basketball the one and done kind of thing.
Yeah.
With the portal, you're bringing in guys that may be with you just for a year and make an impact. Well, that guy has to be replaced next year. So you're going to see roster turnover again, but that's just normal college football. I think Colorado was around 53, but Ole Miss was at 33, and Ole Miss didn't go 1-11 last year.
Yeah.
This is just what has to happen in college football. But I would say to the fans out there and the CU historians, just get ready. Like it's going to be much better than 1-11. You have a higher talent and caliber of athlete. You have a higher talent and caliber of coaching staff. You've got the full support of the AD and Rick George behind Coach Prime. And top of that mountain pipe, you got Coach Prime himself. And he's just a guy that has a lower standard. The standard is the standard, and it's going to be met or people move on. And I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised at how well this roster turnover in the spring works for the fall.
Yeah. And, you see NFL teams that'll draft FCS guys and D2 guys. So, if guys can go from there to the NFL, why can't they go from Jackson State to Colorado, right?
Exactly.
So,
exactly. There is just several teams out there, at that HBC or SWAC level, even MEAC level, that can go hand to hand with some teams in the Power Five or some of those lower level ones, particularly ones that go 1-11. And I think that was what was shocking to me is that the number of people that attacked him for the roster turnover as if they were satisfied or comfortable with 1-11. I don't know how you can hire a new coach coming off a 1-11 season and not demand, want, and celebrate him to make wholesale drastic changes, because you have to do something or you're going to be 2-10.
Right.
So it's one of those things, man. It's like, but I think my biggest surprise, Brian, is not so much what the people were saying during the transition period and as it was crescendoing, but it's been the silence after it. You got 53 that's left, but you got 42 that's coming in. Coach Prime has a camp there in Colorado, May 31st, I think it is, for JUCOs and walk-ons. Already got 200 people registered for it. At just a 10% clip, that means you're going to get 20 guys out of that. 20 plus the 42, now you're 10 over what you got departed, and you still have scholarships in your back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And, I know that, your friends over at DNVR put together a graphic with what left, right? The lack of numbers. And I will say, I don't take that just for what it is, because I think sometimes the numbers are dependent on the situation, right? Like the receiving numbers were bad because the quarterbacking was bad, right? The running back numbers were not very good because the offense was terrible. And their top running back last year obviously was here during the spring. Deion Smith was a pretty good running back, but he only got 8 carries a game because they were so bad, right? So some of those numbers with that, and then I look at it and say, well, he's also bringing in a lot of guys that don't have very good numbers because they didn't play very much. But I think that the point needs to be made that the difference is that the guys he's bringing in are guys he wants, and that they're guys that might fit what he's doing better than what was here. And I think that's a bigger point that needs to be made, more so than the numbers coming in and out, is that they're getting the talent that they need and want for this program, and they're going to try to make it fit.
Yeah, well said. Because you deeper dive on that, you're not switching, from a running back, for example, that got 400 yards to one that got 600 yards. You might be switching 400 to 400 or 400 to 200, but you're switching to a guy that you have evaluated. You're switching to a guy that you sat down on his mama's couch and talked to him and the parents. You're switching to a guy that you believe fits in, Sean Lewis's system better than the other guy. So there's a lot of things at hand more than just numbers. But I do think the numbers matter in this regard. The final number was 1-11. And so whether The receiving yards were skewed because of the quarterback play, and the running back yards were skewed because of the offensive line being lackluster. The bottom line was 1-11, and it wasn't a lot of close games in that 1-11. So something's got to change for something to change.
Yeah, and frankly, you might be switching out one guy that ran for 100 yards for three guys that or one guy that ran for 400 yards for three guys that run for 400 yards, right?
Yeah.
And now you're
Yeah.
better as a group.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's that movie Moneyball.
yeah,
When they were trying to replace Giambi, you don't replace him with one person, replace him with three people.
that's right.
The
Yeah,
numbers.
that's a great point. And one thing in talking to a lot of these newcomers as they've committed the last couple of weeks, one of my favorites was Jaquez Robinson, the cornerback from Alabama, and he made a really good point to me that he said, you know what, he's bringing in a lot of guys like him. Jaquez is. I think he's got one or two tackles in 3 years at Alabama. A four-star kid, hasn't played a whole lot. He was behind Pat Surtain, some other NFL guys. Because he's bringing in a lot of guys that are just hungry. Because we haven't played a lot. There's some guys that might think they got a raw deal at their old school, and that they just need something else. It's a fresh start. And he said, I actually think we're going to have a lot of guys that bond because of that. And I think that's smart. I mean, he's bringing in guys. I wrote this line in a story. We all know the Netflix series Last Chance U.
Yeah.
And this isn't Last Chance U, but I think Deion's sort of turning this into Second Chance U. It's a lot of guys that are getting that second opportunity that maybe it didn't work out at Alabama or Tennessee or Washington or whatever, but you come here and it might click.
Look, let me give you an amen. As Coach Prime has me doing our interview, let me put the organ in right there and give you an example. So there was a guy at the University of Florida by the name of James Houston that was not getting a lot of reps. And he talked to Deion Sanders, and Deion Sanders was able to get him to enter the portal and come to Jackson State. James Houston gets drafted by the Detroit Lions last year. There was a guy who was a return specialist and also a corner at Florida State named Zay Bolden. He talks to Deion Sanders, and he convinces him to get in the portal and come to Jackson State. And Zay Bolden got drafted this year. This works when you got a master chef in the kitchen like Deion Sanders who knows the ingredients he's looking for. And one of those ingredients in that personality and character trait is the hunger. I think a lot of times in programs, people get comfortable. They've been there 2, 3, or 4 years. The facilities are nice and we get all these perks no matter what the scoreboard says, compared to a guy who's just fighting for a chance at another school. And here comes an opportunity in Boulder, Colorado, where you can get that opportunity to show the NFL and the nation what you can do. And those hunger guys are running toward it. You look at the defensive line and how it slid off leading to the spring game. Hats off to those guys who played the spring game. I think they did phenomenal. But what a chance for a guy that's number 2 on the depth chart at Alabama, or number 2 on the depth chart at Arizona, wherever it is, to say, hey, man, Boulder, Colorado, they are looking for some D linemen. I'm not getting my opportunity here. I got a great chance there and a spotlight on me. And I think Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, knows how to use that total package of the concept of the marketing and what this program is going to be and how the nation is going to be watching to get guys to say, I'm going to come to Boulder for that opportunity. It worked in Jackson. The blueprint for that worked. James Houston, goes to the NFL and leading the Lions in sacks. And that 1 year later, Isaiah Bolden gets drafted from Jackson State. And those were two people who transferred under the same kind of thing that's happening in Colorado.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is that I think that a lot of this spring was guys that were shocked by the competition level and what was happening a little bit. Whereas right now, the guys that are coming in, at least everyone I talk to, they know exactly what they're getting into because they've watched it on video now. And they've all said, I said, well, what do you think of the competition in your room? They're like, oh, I know what to expect. I'm going to come in there. You got to work. And one of the guys I talked to, I said, is there some comfort level in knowing that you're one of, 50 transfers or whatever, that you're not alone? So, well, yeah, maybe in that regard. He goes, but it's not going to be comfortable. He goes, we've all got to compete for spots. And he goes, there's no comfort in that. He goes, but I'm ready for it and I love it. And so, I think that this crop of guys coming in this summer that we're seeing that are committing like the last few weeks, they may be underwhelming as far as what they've done at the previous stop, but I think they've all got that hunger. I think they all know what they're getting into because they've seen it now. They've seen, at least from afar, from the videos, the operation of what to expect here. And so I think guys are going to bond over that.
That matches the staff. That matches the media team like myself. it has been easy to transition to Boulder because I already knew, Kevin Mathis or Vincent Dancy or Dennis Thurman or Brett Bartolone or Tim Brewster. It's been easy to transition. That doesn't change the work.
Yeah.
It's still, a 12-hour day with Deion Sanders, if not more. It's still, content driven. So having people you're familiar with or who have transferred in a similar situation certainly gives you kind of a safety net under you that you're not alone. But as those players have told you, man, the work is the work and the standard is the standard. And these guys are in for a time this summer, when fall ball truly starts in that August camp. And of course, some of them will be in summer school doing those player only workouts together. Shador Sanders works the hell out of his receivers in off season. So you're
Yeah.
going to see a lot of work with them.
Yeah. And you listen to him talk. He's an intelligent quarterback. Listen to some of these guys talk that I've interviewed. That's another common thing is that they're all great interviews. Good young men, well spoken, and they're intelligent guys. I mean, they're bringing in some smart football players here, and so I always tell people I don't know how good Colorado is going to be this year, but it will not be boring, and it's going to be a fascinating experiment. And you and I hope we're going to connect a little bit more this summer. But I do have one last thing for you is I think there's 10 open spots right now. There might be a couple others that we don't know about, but you have that camp that you alluded to coming up May 30th. How many spots do you feel Coach Prime is going to leave open for that camp? I mean, do you think this is all going to be filled before that camp, or do you think we're going to see like 5-6 spots that are open?
I think you're going to see scholarships in his back pocket all the way through his satellite camps. He is managing this process. If scholarships were the salary cap, if it was NFL, and he knows I got to stay under the cap because I don't know what's out there that I'm going to discover. So he has that camp in Boulder for JUCOs and walk-ons. Then he goes to the Houston, Texas area for a satellite camp, and then to Atlanta for a satellite camp. So I think he's going to strategically keep some of those in his back pocket even well beyond then. I don't think he's going to exhaust all his scholarships in building this roster.
Okay. At some point he will, I imagine. I mean, by August camp, right? By
I
camp.
don't think he's going to use all the scholarships,
Really?
man.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't think he is.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to assemble a roster that could be successful without exhausting the last one. Because you never know. Scholarships are an annual deal, and
Yeah.
so you have to keep room for growth and attrition and that kind of thing. And when you look at the number of scholarships, the number of players you can travel with, a savvy guy like Deion Sanders knows how to build a roster and not use or lose every single scholarship.
Yeah, you got to be smart with it. That's for sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, and it'll be fascinating to watch that aspect of it. It already has been, but to watch that unfold over the summer and to see how these spots fill up will be amazing. But Neely, we don't have a whole lot of time because I have the cheap Zoom here that is going to run out of time in a minute. So we were going to get into Boulder. We'll do that next time and kind of get more of your thoughts on Boulder and kind of your favorite spots, things like that. But you and I hit the dark horse for a burger a couple months ago. Next time you're in town, we've got to go somewhere else and hit another spot.
I hear a lot about the sink. You did take me to the Dark House. I'm a burger guy, and so you took me there, and I appreciate it. The next one is the sink that's on our list.
That's right. Well, next time you're in town, let me know. We're going to go to the sink and maybe we'll give a review there and and talk about some of the spots there. But we'll talk more about Colorado. I appreciate you very much for joining me. I love the Colorado swag you got going. Next time I'm going to wear my Jackson State hoodie. I thought, would it be weird if I did it now? I think it'd be great if I'm wearing that and you're wearing CU.
What I keep right on my desk.
What's that? I like it.
I got this book from a guy that knows a lot about Colorado football and told me that I should read it, and I keep it right there and refer to it. And that same guy got a Jackson State hoodie from me. And I'm talking to that guy right now.
Well, I'm going to wear it next time, and we've helped each other a little bit through this transition, so it'll be a lot of fun. So, hey, have a great day, and we'll catch up later on this summer.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.